Yeah, I think most people have kind of gotten into the meeting. So just one more time, if you can, please put your name, your agency, and your email in the chat. That would help a lot for us because we're trying to verify attendance for this training to make sure that we know everyone who's attended and we can give access to this reporting tool to people who have attended the training. This is the introductory Looker training. So our hopes with delivering this is that after you get kind of familiar with the tool and go through this training webinar, we can actually give you the access in HMIS and you can actually use the reporting tool yourself. And just a heads up, this presentation will be recorded. So we're able to share the recording in the future as well as share the slides with you so that there's no need to like take notes or anything. We'll be giving you this slide in a follow-up email shortly after this training. But yeah, let's get started. So today's agenda, this is going to be roughly an hour-long meeting where I'm going to be going over some slides about Looker or the HMIS reporting tool. I'm going to be talking about what Looker is, go over some of the terminology, the key features, how to access Looker, and as well as going over the interface so that you know how to use it. And then we're going to actually pivot into HMIS itself. We're going to log in. I'm going to walk you through the reporting process, go over how to create a report in HMIS. That way, when we do give you the access, you're not going in blind. And hopefully, after this training, you feel a little more comfortable using the tool. And once you get access, you can play around with it and gain more familiarity as you start to use it more. So the first thing I wanted to cover was what is Looker? And Looker is the reporting tool in HMIS, and it enables you to explore, analyze, and visualize your agency's data. It goes by a few different names. So, throughout the presentation, if I'm saying Looker or reporting tool or Explore or data analysis tab, they're all kind of referencing the same thing. Basically, Looker is a Google reporting tool, but it's embedded in our HMIS system. So once you have the access to it, you'll be able to use Looker to create reports and save them to HMIS so that you can explore your agency's data, and whatever is entered in HMIS should be available for you to create a report on. Some of the key features of Looker includes linking directly with HMIS to provide information on any data that's entered in there. So any clients, any enrollments, any services, any referrals or assessments, whatever is entered in HMIS, you'll be able to report on that. And generally speaking, the data is real time. So as soon as you enter most data in HMIS, it should be available in Looker, with the exception of a few different fields um, that there is somewhat of a delay in between when you can see the field in your report and when it's entered in HMIS. And I'll be talking about that a little more in depth later. Looker, while also being able to create reports, also gives you the access to run any reports that we've created. So any saved reports that our HMIS team makes is we use Looker to design those and add those to HMIS. And you can also, in addition to running the report in HMIS, you can also export that data and download it in a variety of different file formats so that you can sort of leverage that data outside the tool itself. Maybe use different reporting tools outside to create visualizations or charts or whatever you need the data for. Our goal with giving you this feature is to give you the power to sort of do your own reporting and play with the data as you see fit. And just a quick note about accessing Looker. I think a lot of you have maybe seen this tool before, but generally speaking, you want to log into HMIS under the appropriate agency. You want to click on reports, and then you have the option to either click on the Explore tab, the Data Analysis tab, and the report library, we're going to go into a lot of detail and walk you through the process of the Explore tab, which is basically what you're going to access to create reports in Looker. So the first thing that you should know about, or one of the first things you need to know about Looker is that Looker has these things called models, which are basically report templates. Um, and I know this might be a little confusing, but I assure you that it's going to be a little more straightforward once we actually get into the reporting tool. But the thing you should know about models is that they're basically report templates that you can use while you're creating the reports. And generally speaking, we recommend that you use the HMIS performance Looker model. So once you've accessed Looker in HMIS, you want to make sure most of the time you're creating reports using the performance model. Um, Next section is going to be going on Looker interface. So the Looker interface, this is kind of the screen that you'll be presented with when you click the reports and you click Explore. And it's divided into 3 different sections. We have the first section on the left, where the fields pane, and this is where all the data is that you need to create a report. This is where you're going to be interacting with the tool the most. The top section is going to be called the filters pane, and this is where you can add filters to narrow down your data. And then the bottom is where the data will appear as you're creating the reports. And I think right now, I think I'm going to pivot into HMIS because I'm realizing that it might be a little confusing. So I think it'd be easier to kind of show you the tool itself. So I'm going to actually share my screen, and we're going to go into HMIS to sort of show you the interface itself.
Andrew, just
So,
want to confirm that we do see the training site.
okay, perfect. Okay, so as you're all familiar with HMIS, to access Looker or the reporting tool in HMIS, you want to first click on the waffle icon on the top right, and then go to the reports section. We also want to make sure that we're logged in under the correct agency while we're accessing Looker. So in this example, I'm going to be using OC Training Agency. Generally speaking, you want to be accessing Looker under your own agency. As we see here on the top left, there's sort of 3 different pages we can go to: report library, explore, and data analysis. The report library is going to be where you have some saved canned reports. Uh, Generally speaking, you won't have to use reports in the report library, but some agencies with federally funded projects might have to run sort of HUD designed reports at certain intervals of time. Um, Data analysis tab on the right is where you're going to find saved reports. So any of the reports that we create in HMIS or any of the reports that you create in HMIS, when you save them, they're going to be available here to run for future use. And the middle section is going to be explore. And this is where, like I introduced before, is kind of where you're going to be accessing the Looker tool itself to create reports. And the first thing you choose is your model. So most of the time, and for the sake of sort of the introductory training, we're going to be working in the HMIS performance model. And then after you click the model, we're going to be accessing the Looker tool itself. So on the left side, we have the fields pane. On the top, we have these filters. And then on the bottom, we have data, which is where the data will populate as we select fields. So just to briefly go over the interface so that you're a little familiar, let's say we wanted to create a report where we want to see a list of clients. Well, one way we can find a list of clients is we can actually get the client unique identifier from the left side pane here for the fields. And one thing to note about the fields pane is that it's separated into these different categories. So we see there's custom fields, there's agencies, there's bed and unit inventory. And this is going to kind of indicate where the information is stored in HMIS. So you can think of when you're navigating the reporting tool, where would you find the data that you're trying to grab? So in this case, we're trying to get a client's unique identifier or maybe a client's name. That's going to be on the client's profile page. So the category it would be under is under clients. So when I expand the client's category, I'm going to have all these different dimensions and fields, and these are all the fields, all the text, all the data that's present on the client profile. So for this example, I'm going to scroll down to the unique identifier. And once I click on this unique identifier field, then it's going to pop up in the results tab. If I wanted to get maybe more information on the client itself, maybe I want to also know project start date. Project start date happens to be data that's tied to enrollment. So I would expand the enrollments category and navigate to the project start date of that enrollment. The filters tab. So HMI's performance is going to always have this reporting period filter. But maybe let's say I wanted to look at a specific project type or a specific program. I could add a filter here. And then I can also navigate to the different field categories. So just like the fields pane, the filters is also going to be separated into different categories. And I could add the program name filter. And as you probably noticed, there's no data that's popping up. And that's why the reason why that's happening is because when we create reports in Looker, the data is not populated until we click this run. So it's important to sort of, generally speaking, you want to prepare at least the outline of a report before you click run to make sure that you have the fields and it's easier to navigate without the data being refreshed live. So after you click run, we should be getting sort of a list of clients for this reporting period, the last 1 quarter for this program name, as well as their project start date. And that was sort of the basics of the interface. So before I move on to sort of going more into detail and going over a more robust example, does anyone have any questions on the interface of Looker or like any of the buttons that we just pressed? I know it can be kind of confusing since it might be your first time looking at this tool, but just if you have any questions at all, feel free to leave it in the chat or speak up, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Hi, Andrew. I actually did have a question. You might be going over it later, so just let me know if you are. But what are the icons next to those fields? Like when you clicked on client, there were other icons next to that. What do those mean? Like that little funnel and
Yeah, of course, that's a excellent question. So the different,
specifically on the client, yeah, like all those little icons.
yeah, of course. So right now I'm hovering over the unique identifier field, and these icons will actually they'll kind of tell you what to do. So we have the filter icon. So this is just another way of adding the filter. Instead of clicking the plus filter, you can just click on this funnel icon on the left. This I is for more info, and it will actually give you sort of an explanation of what the field is. So if you're ever like wondering if you have the right field, it's a good habit to click this sort of information icon so that you can know exactly what the field is. So as we see here, it's kind of explaining what the unique identifier is. And then the three icons on the right allows you to aggregate the data and group the data. And I'm going to be going over this more in detail on a later example, but it's a way to sort of play with the column itself to make it show up in a different way. So for aggregating the data, think of it as like if you're in Excel, you're applying a different formula on it. So this is kind of a different way to sort of shape the data to your reporting needs. Because sometimes you might not need a list of clients, you might need the count of clients. And so that's another way to sort of express this field. And then pivoting as well is also going to be a way to sort of manipulate the field so that it shapes your report in a different way to fit your reporting needs. Another thing about the I that I want to show is it will actually give you more information on what the field looks like in HMIS. So for example, if we go to one of the entry custom fields, entry custom field is a category for any custom fields on the intake that you might have for your project. Sometimes they're named exactly how they would appear in HMIS, but if we click the I for more information, we can see the actual question that's being asked. So sometimes the field name might not exactly or match the question name. So it's a good habit to just press the I to make sure that you're getting the appropriate field from HMIS. So as we see here, when we click the I icon here, we can see the full question that's attached with this field. So this is what the question would look like on the enrollment screen. And then, yeah, so before I move into or back into the slides to go over an example, does anyone else have any questions on the interface, or maybe if I missed anything?
Yeah, Andrew, could I ask one other question from the chat?
Yeah,
We
of
have
course.
we have a question about the reporting period. We see that it's currently default to 1 quarter. Is there an option to adjust the dates?
Yeah, so that's a great question as well. The reporting period filter is going to be attached by default in this format, but you can actually change it quite a bit. So you can make it so that it matches any of these sort of different ways to express the dates. If you want an exact date range, you want to use the is in range option, and you can actually specify exactly what your date range is. So maybe you're trying to make a report for the fiscal year, and maybe your agency runs on a July starting fiscal year. So in that case, you would just change the reporting start date to whatever you needed. And then this way we can rerun the report, and this would be for the fiscal year of 2023 to 2024. One thing I also wanted to point out is that when you're using this reporting period filter, you want to make sure that the last day is actually the day after your reporting period ends. So usually the fiscal year would end on June 30th, but if we want to make a report that goes over those dates, we actually want to make sure that the last date is July 1st. And then also with the filters, in addition to the date range, you can also change the options for any fields that you added as a filter. So maybe you're not sure exactly what project you're trying to report on, but you know kind of the partial name, you can change this to contains, or you can maybe add another field and you want to say you can change any of the articles here. You can change it so that it fits your filtering needs.
Thank you, Andrew. There's no other questions in the chat for right now.
Okay, perfect. And yeah, if anyone has any additional questions, feel free to yeah, just leave it in the chat and I'll do my best to get to it. But now I'm going to kind of pivot back into the slides to go over the interface a little bit more in detail and then also introduce a specific reporting example so that I can walk you through the report creation process in more detail. Okay, so now I'm back into the slide deck and I'm going to go over a few more slides that go over the interface. Um, so once again, going over fields, it's available on the left side of the reporting tool is called the fields pane, and they're organized into different categories. So in this example, you can see that I expanded the entry screen category. And this is going to be all the information that you're going to find on the enrollment screen of HMIS. So just a friendly reminder that when you're using this reporting tool, it's a really good idea to frame your thinking as to, you want to think, where is the data entered? And that's going to sort of teach you, or it's going to lead you to in the direction of where you would find the field in Looker. The filters pane, like we said before, is accessible through the top end of this reporting section, but we can also click the funnel icon on the right of every field. And generally speaking, we want to always have a reporting period filter active. That's going to be automatically added with our HMIS performance model reports. And we can apply different options to it to make sure that we're narrowing down the report to our needs. And then data and visualization pane, this is where the data is going to show up after we click run. We didn't really go over the visualization pane that much. For the most of the examples we're going to cover in this training, they're all going to be using the table visualization. But Looker does have the capability to produce some basic charts or basic tables if you want to structure your data that way. And I think that will probably be covered more in depth in a future training. And then now I'm going to sort of go over the example that we're going to use to show you how to build the report from the ground up. So for our first example, the situation is that the executive director from my agency is asking for demographic data for our permanent housing projects in HMIS. And some of the fields we want information on are gender, race, ethnicity, age, veteran status, and disabling conditions. And we want this report to include anyone who is enrolled during the 2024 calendar year. So typically when we're creating reports, I like to frame any question or any reporting request I get in the question of who, what, and when. And the reason I like doing this is because it makes it easy to think of, or to break the reporting request down into these questions is going to make it easier to find out, what fields we're going to use and what filters we're going to use. So in this request, our who is going to be the permanent housing clients. So that indicates that we want to make sure that we filter this report to only permanent housing clients. And so that kind of leads us to think that we're going to have a project type filter. The next filter that we want to make sure we use is the when. So in this example, we are looking at anyone who was enrolled during the 2024 calendar year. So that's kind of lead us and indicate what we're going to use for a reporting period filter. And then the what, which is the fields that we're going to be clicking. So we're looking at demographic data, race, ethnicity, age, veteran status, and disabling condition. And because we're looking at demographic data, we're kind of aware that that data is going to be present on the client's page. So that kind of sort of guides us where we're going to be or what fields we're going to be adding. So I'm going to go back into Looker, and then I'm going to show you exactly my process for how I would create this report. Okay, so now we're back into Looker or sorry, we're back into HMIS. And so we want to access our reporting tool or Looker. So we're going to click the waffle icon, go to reports. We're going to click explore because we're creating the reports. And then we're going to click on our HMIS performance model. We're going to open that. While this is loading, we want to make sure that we're logged in under the correct agency. So OC Training Agency. And now we're back into the reporting tool. So going back to our example, we want to remember our who, what, and when. So for the report, we're looking at permanent housing clients. So a good thing to start off is to just add the filter for permanent housing clients. So in this case, I'm going to be filtering on the project type. So I'm going to add the field. I'm going to go to program. And I'm actually going to filter by project type code. Since we want permanent housing, I want to click all of the fields that are relevant to the projects that we're reporting on. So I'm going to click permanent housing, housing only, permanent housing, housing with services, and permanent supportive housing. And that should cover us for our who. The next one that we want to think of is when. So in the example, it was anyone enrolled during the 2024 calendar year. So we're going to change the reporting period to is in the year, or we can be more specific and put is in range. So I'll change the reporting period to 2024. And then making sure that we have the end reporting period is the day after 2024. So we'll put that at 2025. And then I think that covers us for our filters. And then we wanted demographic data for all the enrollments. So there's a few different ways we can go about this, but let's start things off by maybe just making a list of clients and then seeing how that would look like in the report. So first, I'm going to start things off by adding a client field. And I like to start most reports by adding the client unique identifier. It's just a good way to sort of organize your data and make sure that every new line of the report is going to be a new client. And I'm just going to add all the fields that were in the request. So we had gender. We also had race and ethnicity. We had veteran status. And then we had disabling conditions, which, while it's a demographic field, since you enter disabling condition information with every enrollment, it would actually not be in the client page. It would actually be in the entry screen page because you record the disability information when you're performing client intake. So we're going to go to the entry screen field category. Going to scroll down to disabling condition information. And there's a lot of different fields here. And if you're ever, curious about what these fields represent, it's a good idea to sort of go back into the info tab or the info button, and that's going to give you the exact question on how it appears in HMIS. So if we look at the any disability field, what it's going to look like when you're doing the enrollment screen is it's going to be the answer to this question. Does the client have any disability type recorded? And that seems like it's going to be the field that we want to check our demographics for. So after I have all my fields, I'm going to click run so that I can kind of get sort of a blank idea of like what the report looks like. So here we have a list of clients, and this is all their different sort of demographic information. So you have their gender, race, ethnicity, veteran status, as well as any disability they may have. And this is sort of one way to express the data, but there's a lot of different ways you can actually express the same information in Looker. So maybe you didn't want a list of clients. Maybe you wanted to see sort of the number of clients in your projects that have or that fall under a specific category. That would change the report quite a bit. But because we don't want to sort of eliminate all our progress and start over from scratch, I think this is a good point to sort of go over saving the look. That way, if this is actually, a suitable solution to the reporting request, we can access it later. So once we have our draft report completed and we want to save it, we can actually click on this purple Save Look button. And then we can name the look and save it so that we can run it in the future. And one thing I want to reinforce about saving is that you want to make sure that you're not overwriting any of the existing looks. So generally speaking, you want to save as new look and then choose whatever name you need. And then we can click save, and then that report will now be in our data analysis tab for future use. In addition to saving, we can also export the data. So exporting is done by clicking the gear icon on the top right. And we can go to download, and then we can actually export any of this data that's in our report in a variety of different formats. So we can pick the different file formats. We can click whether or not we want to keep the formatting that's in Looker. And then an important part is to you almost always want to select all results. Otherwise, it's only going to show you the results that are loaded on the table in the browser. So that's kind of I'm not going to export the data right now, but if you wanted to access this report for future use, we would be able to by going, back to reports. It's going to be in our data analysis tab. And then it's going to be saved in this folder. Your agency name is going to be here, not OC Training Agency. And we have our old report, PH Demographic Data 2024. You could run that. And then this is the report that we had, and you can see that it retained all of our information, so we can work on it some more, or we can, If you want to just run this report again, maybe you want to run it for a different reporting period, you can make changes and then go through, running the report again. But yeah, that's the basics of creating a report. Did anyone have any questions regarding sort of creating the report or just the Looker tool in general? So yeah, I do see that we have a question. I don't appear to have an option to save look on your account. Yeah, so that's part of the reason why we're doing this training. The idea is that we're giving agencies a more like hands-on introduction to the tool. And since you have attended this training, we're gonna be able to enable the save look onto your accounts. And sort of next steps is going to be sent to your email. So that's kind of the purpose of this training. You should be able to access the save look after you send a ticket, but we're going to be in touch regarding getting you that access. And then there was another question, does the report automatically show only active clients within the reporting period? Yeah, so this reporting period filter that's enabled by default is only going to show you clients that were active during this time. So they have to have had an enrollment active anytime between this. It doesn't necessarily mean that they would have had to start the enrollment. So if you had, let's say, permanent housing clients that were enrolled in 2023, but they stayed enrolled, they would still be captured by this reporting period filter.
And then, Andrew, we have another question. I wanted to read this aloud so you can share. How do we choose to share results by head of household only instead of listing the whole family?
Yeah, of course. That's a great question. So if you only want to show head of household information, you generally want to add a filter for that. So one of the filters that we can add is whether or not they're a head of household on the enrollment itself. I think I'm just going to try to search it up and see if that pops up. Okay. So there's a few different ways you can do that. So one, you can filter it by if they're a head of household in the global household. So I just searched up head of household and I'm going to add this to filters. And we're going to make it so that it's only going to show the enrollments or the list of the client is only going to show up if they're the head of household in the global household. And if we click run, that should narrow down the results quite a bit. And so all these clients are going to be their global head of household. There's also an option to filter by the enrollment household. So that's another thing. When you're looking up fields, you want to make sure that you're narrowing or filtering by the correct field and adding the correct field. So let's say you wanted to only see the results of people who are the enrollment household. So you would actually filter by this field instead. And generally speaking, those should match, but there are some scenarios where they're not the global head of household, but they're still the enrollment head of household. So it just depends on your needs for filtering. I do see another question in the chat. Can you show how to run a report to demonstrate how long it takes for someone to be placed from street level or from street outreach to a shelter? Um, I think that might be a good reporting example to go over in our sort of advanced training. Um, that one seems like it's a little bit more complex because it's dealing with multiple different projects at the same time, and it's a more like sequential report. Um, but that kind of brings me into sort of the next topic I wanted to share, which is how you're going to be able to use this reporting tool and sort of how you're going to be able to um, submit reporting requests. So while we encourage people once they gain this access to use it for any basic reporting needs that they have, we do want to encourage you to also reach out if you have access to the tool. If you have any questions, we're still able to sort of provide that support. So with more complex reporting requests, we still encourage you to sort of submit a ticket, and then we can work on this report together. But the intent of this basic training is kind of just to give you access to the tool so that if you have any more simple requests or if you want to play around with your data yourself, we're going to give you the access to do so. I don't see any other questions regarding sort of the basics of the interface, so I'm going to pivot back into the slides and sort of provide some more recap slides on the interface and how Looker works. And I'm going to share some additional tips and information as well. So we're back into the slide deck, and this is kind of the report we were able to create. Just going over, recapping is that it's good to frame your question into this who, what, and when framework. That's going to make it a lot easier to figure out, what fields to use and what filters to use. We went over exporting data from Looker. So as a friendly reminder, exporting data is fairly straightforward. You access the exporting page by going to the gear icon on the top right. And then you can also select different options. So what file format you want to be working with, whether or not you want to keep the formatting of the Looker tool itself, or maybe you want a more raw data structure, and then as well as number of rows to include. And generally speaking, we want to keep this default as the options you select. So generally speaking, you want to export as Excel spreadsheet with visualization options applied, formatted data values, and all results. But it's totally going to depend on your needs. Maybe you want to select a different file format because you're going to be importing that into a different data tool. Just make sure that you're selecting the right options for your reporting needs. And then saving looks, we also went over how to save looks, how to save reports in HMIS. Saved looks are going to be available to you to run in the data analysis tab. And yeah, after this training, we're going to be sending out a recap email on next steps so that we can get this save look button enabled for you so that you can start creating and saving reports in HMIS. And then as well as, after you do get that save look button, just go into the data analysis tab, and then it should be saved under your Orange County United Way, your agency name reports folder. And that's about it for the basics about creating a report. I do have another example here that I'm probably going to show, but first I wanted to sort of share sort of some final notes and some best practices. So the first thing I wanted to cover was the data refresh rate. So like I said before, generally speaking, information in HMIS, as soon as it's entered, should be available in Looker, but sometimes it's not going to be available. And we're going to provide you with some more documentation that specifies which fields are subject to a delay. But if you ever encounter, maybe information you just entered is not appearing in the HMIS reporting tool, it could be because of this data refresh rate. And then also, if you do run into the situation where maybe your data is not appearing in Looker, one of the ways to hopefully fix that is by clearing the cache. And that's also available in the gear icon in the reporting tool. I also wanted to emphasize that you should review any existing looks or reports before creating. Sometimes we already have existing reports that might suit your needs, and maybe they just need to be adjusted for the current fiscal year. You can run those reports and you can just change the filter. Maybe you can save over it if you need to. But it's a good idea to just review the reports that are already saved at your agency to make sure that we're not being redundant with the stuff we create. And then also a friendly reminder to not overwrite any existing looks, especially the ones that are created by HMIS staff. So with the save look button, you technically have the ability to save over these, but we really urge you not to save over these looks because we're unable to restore them. And if they're in the Orange County folder and not your agency folder, they're actually used by multiple different agencies. So please only save looks that you created. Don't make any changes to any existing HMIS reports. If you do have a report that you run that we've created and you want to make adjustments to it, just submit a ticket and we'll be happy to give you a different version of that report and save it to your agency folder. And as well as any other reporting inquiries that you might have questions with or you need any assistance with, feel free to continue reaching out to the HMIS help desk. Even though you have access to create looks, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any reporting inquiries or you want more complex reports or you want any of the existing reports to be changed. We're happy to assist with any of that. And now I'm going to kind of leave it to general questions and answers. And yeah, if friendly reminder, if you can please enter your agency name and email in the chat if you haven't done so already, so that we can verify attendance. And yeah, feel free to leave any questions as well, and I'll try to go over those. And if you want to see maybe some more specific reporting examples, I can also go over that as well. Okay, so there was a question of when can we expect to have the save look function available? We'll be reaching out with next steps and a more specific timeline. You should expect to receive a follow-up email sometime at the end of the week. I also wanted to, we're also going to be holding another training that's going to go over the tool in more depth later this week. So I think that's scheduled for Thursday. So we'll be sending out our recap email after that second training. And it's going to be a little more clear as to how you're going to get that access and when you'll be able to get that access. Yes, so the deeper dive into Looker is going to be this Thursday, January 16th at 10 a.m. Yeah, so I see a question in the chat to go over another example. Can you please try creating a report that shows a list of households without children by head of households as of today, 113? Yeah, I think I can go over another example. And I think I'm going to be using the rest of this training to kind of go over some additional examples um, if anyone has any requests. But yeah, that's kind of it for the slides. So um, thank you for attending the training. Um, Now I'm just going to kind of go over some more additional examples for anyone that has any requests. Okay, so now I'm back into HMIS and we're going to kind of go over a different reporting example. So I'm going to make sure I'm logged in under the correct agency. Going to go to reports. Going to go back into the Explore tab under HMIS Performance. And then the report request was create a report that shows a list of households without children by head of household as of today, 113. So if we want to make sure that the enrollment is active for today, uh, we can sort of change the reporting period filter so that it only shows data for um, active enrollments for the past day. So we could do is in the last 1 day, or you can just do is in range for the specific day, or you could even just put is today.
Andrew?
Yeah.
So there's two different ways to do this depending on what you're trying to do. The way that Andrew is showing right now is, so if they're active at any point on the current date, which is the 13th, meaning that would also include someone if they exited today because they were active at some point during the day. If you only wanted to see people that were still active as of this moment, there's a separate field that's, I think it's called active in program under enrollments. So that would only include people that don't have an exit date. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you for that reminder. Yeah, so if we only want to have active enrollments as of today, we can just use the active in project filter. And that's going to be available under the enrollments category. And since we have the active in project enrollment filter, we don't actually need to do a reporting period filter. But I'll just keep it on just for, I guess, a good measure. And we want a list of households without children. So because I'm going to have a list of clients, I'm going to use the client unique identifier as my first column or my primary key so that there's a new row for every client. And we only want households without children. So that indicates that we want to use the household type as our field. So that's going to be under the client profile. And we only want households without children. And we only want the head of household's unique identifier to show up. So we're going to go also to household type. We're going to look for if they're the global head of household. And we're going to click run, and this should return us a list of clients that were active in the project today, whose household type is households without children, and it's only going to show us the unique identifiers of the global head of household. Oh, and we also should be filtering for our project, of course. Otherwise, we're just going to get everyone in HMIS. We don't want that. So I'm going to also add a filter for project name. And it looks like we only have one head of household active in the project right now that falls under this household type.
Andrew, could I add a note?
Yeah, of course.
Yes, and then of course this is our test training account, so there might not be as much data as in the Live Clarity site, but just wanted to note there's also a field called Head of Household Yes No under entry screen. If we go to enrollment household, we need to expand that. It will have additional fields and we can select Head of Household field there. Andrew, could you confirm if this is the entry screen category?
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah, so entry screen, enrollment head of household. And yeah, this is another head of household field, like Elizabeth said. This is going to ensure that the people that are included in the report are the enrollment head of household, not just the global head of household.
And just wanted to add some notes. As Andrew mentioned in the training, it is important to know what screen you're filtering and what screen you're pulling data from. So as Andrew mentioned, if you're new to Looker and you're kind of exploring and trying to build out reports and you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to discuss and review any reports you build to ensure that it's pulling from the right screen, you're pulling in the right data and using the filter based on what you're looking to report out. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, of course. So I think that's sort of the only reporting request we got in the chat. So I think we should be good to conclude the training here. But yeah, if anyone else has any questions, feel free to leave it in the chat. And I can go over another example if needed. But as a friendly reminder, we're going to be reaching out probably at the end of the week or a little shortly after this week to walk you through next steps onto how to get the Save Look access. But yeah, as always, thank you for attending the training, and feel free to submit a ticket if you have any additional questions. But yeah, we'll be in touch.